Hey, soldiers, we are currently experiencing an attempt by non-governmental organizations, corrupt politicians, and corrupt business leaders to re-engineer society, destroy the middle class, and reset the economy.
What did you say?
We're going to go over a World Economic Forum familiar. I'll make you familiar with that term later on in the video. And how this individual believes that we got too many people on the earth. This is what he's out there espousing. We're also going to talk about how Bill Gates tends to agree. Okay, so we got a non-governmental organization and we got a corporate chieftain in there kind of talking that same language. All right, these are Bond villains. We're going to show you how the decisions that are being made in these halls of power are actively destroying the modern infrastructure in real time. And then we're going to end this video with three businesses, three parallel economy businesses you might want to consider getting into, okay, studying, trying to find out more information about. No, they're not financial services and or real estate, although we are in those businesses and they've treated us very well. We're going to explore, okay? We're going to spread our wings and look into some other opportunities. In this video, at the end, you got to stay tuned. Now, before we get started, you're not going to hear this on CNBC. Fox Business ain't talking about what we are. Bloomberg, please. Okay, soldiers, like, subscribe, share, please. Thank you. Let's get into this World Economic Forum. He calls himself a futurist, and he's one of the little familiars running around with Klaus Schwab over at the World Economic Forum. What is a familiar? In vampire lore, the people who hang out with the vampires, they're not vampires, they just hang out with them, and they want desperately to be a vampire, and maybe one day Dracula will make them a vampire, probably will just eat them and discard the carcass, but they have a hope that if they just hang out, they can be like the vampires one day. And so this individual that we're talking about, he's a familiar with old Klaus Schwab, the Dracula of our day over at the World Economic Forum.
The master will come, and he has promised to make me immortal.
Klaus Schwab's lieutenant, Yuval Noah Harari, said the quiet part out loud. People realize, this is a quote, and they're correct in thinking that the future doesn't need me. You have all these smart people in California and in New York and Beijing. Wow, leaves a lot of us out. Back to the quote. And they're planning this amazing future with artificial intelligence and bioengineering and global connectivity and whatnot, and they don't need me. Listen to the interview in its entirety on the community page. I'll post it over there so you can check it out. Now hang with me here. This is his money shot coming up. Now fast forward, this is a quote, fast forward to the early 21st century when we just don't need the vast majority of the human population because the future is about developing more and more sophisticated technology. Harari goes on to explain most people don't contribute anything to artificial intelligence and bioengineering except perhaps for their data, aka DNA. And whatever people are still doing, which is useful, whatever they're doing, which is useful, these technologies increasingly will make redundant and will make it possible to replace the people. I don't know where in the hell these corporations think they're going to get money from if the people aren't generating income. Oh, you think the socialist model is going to work? Okay. Now, the thing is, though, we are seeing this replacement of human beings. We are seeing that occur. California, in all of their wisdom, has this bill that's waiting for signature of Gavin Newsom. If he signs it, it'll go into law. It separates fast food industry workers from the regular minimum wage. California's minimum wage is $15 per hour, I believe. And they're going to go ahead and pass this bill. Well, they passed the bill. Newsom's got to sign it into law. But if he does, it'll make California's fast food workers able to get a wage of up to a minimum wage of up to $22. Yes, their current regular minimum wage is $15. They could take it up to $22 for fast food. Now, what do you think that will do for families who are trying to, just get a burger? Okay. Yeah, a lot of people rely on fast food. I'm not saying it's the healthiest thing, but we're dealing with reality. People do what they got to do, right? Especially if you're homeless. If you are in a situation where you don't have a place to store food, then fast food becomes an option. Well, it's already an option, but it becomes more of an option. It becomes the only option if you don't have a place to store the food. California is a state with the most homeless people. All right, so you've got that out there. What about, so you're going to price people out of fast food, for God's sakes? Somebody's in there making $22 an hour. Don't you think the price of the McDonald's hamburger is going to go way up? Also, it's going to hurt the employees that look for those jobs. And the reason it's going to hurt them is because you can bet your bottom dollar that these fast food restaurants are going to automate. Flippy, the robot, it makes hamburgers. You go into the McDonald's right now and you've got the kiosk. I was in a Dunkin' Donuts. They've started introducing the kiosk. So automation is creeping in. It's replacing people. So if you raise that wage over and above what your regular minimum wage is, you're going to create a situation whereby you're going to eliminate jobs sooner. And look, when I was in high school, I worked at McDonald's and I had a good old time, man. I made a little money. Okay. I got to eat the food. They allowed you to have a McDonald's meal every day that you worked. And I may have, because I was a fry cook, I may have made an extra Big Mac for myself a time or two. I think the statute of limitations has run out. I can admit it now.
This is a tasty burger.
Now, the World Economic Forum's Harari, he's like parroting Bill Gates, because Bill Gates has come out and he's said some things in the past that prove that he is a eugenicist. He does not think that we should have as many people on the planet as possible. Get a load of what this guy said. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person is using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each of these. Remember, he said people. Let's look at each of these and see how we can get that down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near zero. He goes on to say, and again, this now is Bill Gates, everybody's least favorite billionaire. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that.
What?
Whose man is this? All right, now let's take a look at how these machinations of the so-called elite are actually starting to destroy our infrastructure. European banks brace for energy rations that could threaten financial systems. Rush to test diesel-fueled backup generators. Isn't that like the opposite of what they want to do? The world is learning that we cannot power society on solar and wind, okay? We're not there yet. And it's time for these so-called leaders, I call them representatives, they're not a leader of me. It's time that they stop listening to people like little Greta, okay, a little girl.
How dare you?
And start understanding the reality of the sheer amount of energy it takes to run society. The banks are starting to, especially these European banks, are starting to learn. European banks have conducted stress tests, complete with backup generators and dimmed lights, to determine whether their operations will be impacted by energy rationing, according to a Wednesday report from Reuters. The move comes after Russia cut off natural gas shipments through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline until Western powers rolled back sanctions on the nation's petroleum products. As the European Union scrambles to address energy shortages, while natural gas prices increase more than tenfold compared to normal levels, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced on Wednesday that her government would propose a mandatory target for reducing electricity consumption during peak demand. So, Europe, once they called Paris the City of Lights, and they were talking about intellectual enlightenment. Well, in both respects, intellectualism and in electricity, it seems that Europe is falling down, on the job. Leading banks, many of which facilitate transactions crucial to European economies, are therefore conducting stress tests to determine the possible impact of rationed power supply. One person familiar with operations at JP Morgan Chase, which employs thousands in London and Frankfurt, told Reuters that the company has carried out power outage simulations and could use diesel generators to keep offices running for multiple days. Another source told the outlet that UniCredit, the second largest bank in Italy, tested the resilience of its data processing amid low power supplies. Meanwhile, Euronext, which runs Italian and French stock exchanges, said it had reevaluated its energy consumption and possesses backup generators. Swiss company Zurich Insurance Group is darkening offices and turning off, quote, decorative power consumers, such as fountains. Deutsche Bank is switching off hot running water in bathrooms. Well, I guess you're going to have to wash your hands extra hard. Adjusting workplace temperatures, powering down interior branch lighting, and illuminated outdoor advertising at night. And they're also turning off their fountain. A bank is turning down the lights in the branch during banking hours. Bonnie and Clyde would love to hear something like that. All right, I promised you that we would take a look at some alternate or parallel economy opportunities. And what we're going to do is go over, and I will link to this, the Daily Bell. Here are 3 opportunities you might want to take a look at. Number 1, installing off-grid energy and water systems. Now look, right here in Baltimore, we're going to do a larger video on this. Baltimore, they found E. coli in the water system. You know about the problems that are going on down in Mississippi. You got Flint, Michigan with their long-standing issue. American infrastructure is breaking down. We're giving money to Ukraine by the billion, okay? And American infrastructure is crumbling. We can't even drink the water in a lot of these cities. Anecdotally, I'm on well water. And we were trying to represent a client years ago that wanted to purchase a home, but they insisted that it not be on well water. And I had a conversation with the individual, and I said, what concerns you about that? They said the cleanliness. I said, listen, if you get water from a municipal source, chances are at some point that is going to come through a pipe that's been in the ground for over 100 years, okay? Your well goes down into the aquifer, taps it, brings it right up. The infrastructure is right there on your property. So this gentleman was like, hey, thanks, I never knew that. So when we're talking about water, it's vital. We can't live without it. And we're seeing that there are problems providing it. If you don't have electricity, Europe is experiencing these electrical issues. That's going to create a problem with getting water, pumping water also. The Romans were getting water to your damn house 2,000 years ago. And now Europe is facing problems with it. Local infrastructure like water and power is increasingly threatened by centralizing it. That leaves it vulnerable to attacks or natural disasters, not to mention those public health officials who threaten to shut off utilities to businesses who didn't comply with their health edicts. One business that could help people break free from centralized utilities is to provide complete off-grid power, solar, hydro, wind, and rainwater or well system installation on homes and businesses. You do that, you're taking the power out of the hands of the central system. I'm not beholden to the water authority to go downstairs and get a drink. And I put my own filtration system in my house so that I can control the quality of that water. It is tested annually, and it's doing just fine. You can sell and install water filtration systems and gray water outputs used to flush toilets or water gardens. Now look, this will take some research on your part, but I think as time goes on, something like this is going to become more and more essential and important. People are going to be looking for these types of alternatives and opportunities. Can you imagine if you lived in the UK and you had your own setup where solar was powering your little home or your little business, and when it was doing it there and you were storing the energy in batteries? Now look, on a very localized level, hey, you might have something. But trying to power a global society off of wind and solar ain't going to work. It's not working now. But can you imagine not receiving one of those $10,000 bills because you got it all taken care of? It's a basic business model. Find wholesalers who sell equipment for a reasonable price and then charge a markup and installation fees. I'm going to include some articles to get you started on researching that. That's number one. Now, number two is huge. Providing educational alternatives. Look, let's be honest. What's going on in the schools today, the public school system, is unconscionable. The things that they're focusing on. You've got teachers who are supposed to be adults talking about their sex lives with children. Okay? That would have never... When I was going to school, the only thing we knew about the personal lives of our teachers was whether or not her husband came picked her up from work at the end of the day. You know, oh, there's Miss Flynn. She's driving off with her husband. See you tomorrow. That's it. That's all we knew. In addition, if you look at graduation rates, if you look at test scores, if you look at the money that's being spent per citizen, Baltimore City just went up to about $20,000 per student. I could educate the hell out of a student. I would have this person over at they'd be Rhodes Scholars. Okay, they'd be over at Oxford by the time I finished with them, and it wouldn't take me $20,000 a year to do it. If you haven't noticed, people are fed up with public schools. There's critical race theory that indoctrinates children with either a victim mentality or shames them for being an oppressor. Then there's the protocols based around the health crisis, sexual course material, physical danger, and just the poor quality of education. Speaking of the physical danger piece, we had a student here in Baltimore shot and killed at one of the public schools. And then there was an incident not far from a school the next day. So it's getting real in the field. When you send your kid out to school, you want to know that they're safe, right? All right. So give parents a better option than screaming at their local school board. I've always said, you're bitching and complaining to the school board. Meanwhile, your kid is matriculating through a system that you have identified as corrupt. That doesn't make any sense. You got to have an alternative. Tutoring is one avenue you could approach this from. Sylvan Learning Systems, remember them? They're big. There's several options like that. Do they feel their knowledge, they being the parents, do they feel their knowledge is inadequate to homeschool their children on certain subjects? Do they need a cheaper solution than the one when they're one-on-one tutor or private school? What if, say, 6 families split the cost of a full-time tutor? At $50 an hour, 6 hours per day, 5 days per week, for 40 weeks per year, that's $60,000 per year for the teacher with 12 weeks off, and only $250 per week in session for each of the 6 families participating. Provide your potential consumers the info they need to make the decision. Find out how their kids can still participate in sports being homeschooled. Find out if they can get money back from the school for homeschooling expenses. Offer additional services like driving kids to their extracurriculars, value adds basically. You can tutor these kids directly. You can set up all kinds of services around the extracurricular piece. You can act as a consultant. There are many possibilities. Now let's get to the last one. I went into Tractor Supply today to purchase some supplies, and there was a flyer, and it was for a local horse sanctuary, and they were saying that join us for our open house on September 18th from 2 to 5. Come out, meet the animals. Food will be provided by a local farm. Okay, so there's a partnership there. They'll have activities for the kids. Now here's the money shot. Vendors are welcome. $20 per vendor spot. So setting up some type of club or community support system or community activity group is something you may want to consider. Clubs are a great way to engage like-minded community members. What makes clubs special is a theme. Like this one is the horse farm, okay? And they're having the farm there to sell their wares. So you got to partner with somebody to, again, make it a value add. All right, so the club is special because it has a characteristic that binds people together. If you have good event space, so you have access to it and you can lease it maybe, you could try hosting a paid event to see if you can generate interest. Center it around a cause or a charity that the cost of attendance will benefit so that friends and acquaintances won't just think you're being cheap in hosting your party. Explain to your guests your goals. You could also do something around that. Like when I was younger, they had fight parties, okay? Now, let's be real. You got to be very discerning with regard to who you invite to events that you're having, because there could be a lot of liability involved. So you can't get greedy and invite 1,000 people. They did that over at a local event, an Asian food event not far from us, and people were pissed because it was just mass chaos. They didn't plan for the crowd that they ended up having. All right, guys. So I know this has been a long one. It's been necessary. So take a look at those opportunities. Again, I'll link to things in the description. I will talk to you soon.